Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have a lot to get into. The Penguins split 2 games with the Islanders, yet they lose ground. Why? Regulation wins. They haven't gotten a lot of them. They need more. We'll talk about that. We'll also get into the Pirates, who begin their spring training today. The Steelers prioritize. We have a lot to get into there. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be quarterbacks in the NFL, starting with Ben Roethlisberger. And here to talk about it is your panel. We have Chris Adamski, who does good work with the Tribune Review. Trib Live. Below him, it's Paul Zeise from 93.7 The Fan and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And to his right, it is Chris Mack, co-host of the Fan Morning Show on 93.7 The Fan. So, Art Rooney this week here, gentlemen, doubled down on his desire to keep Ben Roethlisberger. Chris Adamski, good move or bad move?
Yeah, listen, I write a weekly column about numbers and stats and everything. I understand the modern sort of fan, the modern math thing to do is to tank a season and you're better off in the future. But there's no guarantee of that. How many teams have done that over and over again? The Browns did it for a quarter century before finally maybe getting it right. You can't tell me. I'm sorry. Like, and I'm probably more of a Mason Rudolph defender than anybody, or at least more than a lot of people anyway. And I think he can be a starting, low-level starting quarterback in the NFL. You can't tell me that in 2021 that the Steelers would be better off with somebody else other than Ben Roethlisberger, outside of making some sort of ridiculous splash like going to get Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, which is not going to happen. I think this is still a play. You still have a very good defense. You still have a pretty good skill position core, if you can address running back anyway. At least we're talking about the wide receivers, I guess, is all I'm referring to. You can make the playoffs, and yeah, they're not going to win the Super Bowl next year. But I mean, isn't the point to have fun as a fan and root for your team and have them have a winning record and have them at least get to the playoffs and give you some of those moments to remember? I think they can do that with Ben Roethlisberger.
Well, here's the thing. I have really no interest in Ben Roethlisberger running Matt Canada's offense. And if you're going to bring Ben Roethlisberger back, why did you not just leave Randy Fichtner in place? Randy Fichtner is Ben's hand-picked offensive coordinator. If you want Ben back, why not bring back the guy that he wants calling the plays so that essentially he can call plays? To me, you're not going to win the Super Bowl next year, so I completely disagree, Chris. You're going to have a guy, and you know how Ben gets when he starts getting passive-aggressive with his quotes about, Coach Matt and running the ball and all the other stuff. To me, I think the Steelers would be better off moving on from Ben, spending that $19 million that they save on other people, in making the roster better, and then, planning for whatever's next at quarterback. But in this case, you give Mason Rudolph a year to try and see if he can figure it out. That's the way I would go.
Yeah, you just touched on a number of the topics that are the main reason I don't like this idea of granting Ben his ride off into the sunset year, if that's what he thinks it's going to be, guys. I think first and foremost, we have to go with recency bias. Look at the last 6 weeks of the season. Did Ben Roethlisberger look that great outside of the second half against the Colts? I don't think so. He looked like an aging quarterback with a bad offensive line and no run game. Where are they going to get an offensive line or a run game between now and September? Okay, we're going to install a new offensive coordinator, a guy we recognize has some great ideas in Matt Canada, and we'll do some drafting, but it's not going to be enough to fix all of that. And then also get Ben Roethlisberger on board with running Matt Canada's offense by the time the 2021 season starts. For all those reasons and more, it has nothing to do with tanking for me, guys. It has everything to do with setting this franchise up for the next few years. You have a season to find out what you do have in Mason Rudolph, if anything, and you have the money under the cap to continue to build around the defensive side of the ball, which, regardless of whether Mason Rudolph is your quarterback or Ben Roethlisberger or some draft pick next year or this year, you're going to have to build on the defensive side of the ball in order to go win championships, because you don't have that franchise quarterback right now.
Chris Mack, you mentioned the last 6 games. What about the first 11 games? Is it that quick to fall off? And what if his arm is better because he's now a year and a half, 2 years away from that surgery? Who knows how that surgery actually affected the arm? And it could be that he is actually better arm strength-wise going into next year than he would have been coming into this past year. How about if that's true?
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Bob. To expect his arm to get any stronger after the way we saw him play in December and early January, I think would be foolish. I think his arm He wasn't able to make deep outside throws. I mean, every once in a while, right? We'd get that pretty throw into the end zone in Buffalo, or you'd get one against Indy, like I referenced that second half against the Colts. Every once in a while. It's still in there in flashes. No one's saying Ben Roethlisberger is terrible. He's just not good enough. He's not good enough to win you a Super Bowl.
All right.
One thing, with all due respect to Matt Canada, I think Matt Canada is an intelligent coach and a good guy. But I mean, this will be the first time he's had a job 2 years in a row since 2014 and 15. All right. He was unemployed 2 seasons ago. To start just completely remaking your franchise and your offensive identity and everything around a guy that maybe he will be here, maybe he'll be in NFL. Again, I'm not putting him down, but I mean, let's back up the truck here and say, let's tailor everything to Matt Canada all of a sudden.
Well, it can't be worse than Coach Randy.
But that's the point. That's the whole point. Why would you make him your offensive coordinator if you're going to bring Ben back? Last year, for instance, Ben Roethlisberger, you know what he liked to do? He liked the RPOs. Do you know why? Because he never chose the R option. It was he could pass the ball 65 times a game. He doesn't like being under center. Matt Canada's offense, a lot of it is under center. He doesn't like turning his back to the defense. He's going to have to do that a bunch in Matt Canada's offense. And he doesn't like handing the ball off a ton. And you know what? For that offense to work, he's got to do that. So to me, if you're going to make Matt Canada your offensive coordinator, bringing Ben back makes 0 sense. But
all right, real quick,
we'll
we got 2 minutes here. I want to just get you guys' take around the horn on this one. Quarterbacks in general now, we're seeing a lot of them. There's a lot of guys changing uniform, but it seems like all these star players, and I use Deshaun Watson as the primary example, but there are others now following suit. They sign these long-term deals. In fact, Watson just 6-8 months ago signed it. Now all of a sudden he wants out. At what point does the player have to live up to the onus, we'll start with you, Paul Zeise, on you signed a contract, come on now. You may not like what's going on, we're making changes. And you just leave when you want to leave, and does this become an epidemic?
That's what I'd say to, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. Wow, that franchise has treated you so horribly. They've made you they've given you hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts. To me, it's absolutely ridiculous. These guys are always seemingly now, everybody wants something and they want to be where the grass is greener. But the thing about it is, Bob, they don't understand their contracts are a big reason why their teams can't do the things they need to do to fill in the roster around them.
Well, I think in the case of Deshaun Watson, guys, and I think it's leaning this way in Russell Wilson's case as well, it's a matter of if you're going to tell me you're going to bring me in on a decision, or at least ask for my feedback before you make a decision, actually do that and ask for my feedback, which they didn't do in Houston. I don't know. Russell Wilson complaining about his offensive line being good enough or not good enough is just a hair off from that. But if you're going to tell Deshaun Watson, who's your franchise quarterback, or you're building a franchise around, hey, we want you to be a part of our decision and where we go with our new GM and new head coach, and then you don't invite him into the process, how do you think he's going to react?
One thing I'll say is I have a lot less problem, and I don't mind the NFL football players pulling these power moves because their contracts aren't guaranteed. So they can get cut at any time.
But the signing bonus is, and normally it's over $100 million.
Right, but I mean, look at the Orioles are starting. They're trotting out Chris Davis 4 or 5 years in a row now. You reminded that just today watching the Pirate game. He's making $25 million and hitting 160 or whatever it is. Right. His contract's guaranteed. Now, so if the Orioles, if he wanted to get out of his contract when he was overachieving it 2 or 3 years ago, I'd have a lot more bigger problem with that than maybe a football player whose contract isn't guaranteed. So therefore, maybe exercising that leverage is a little more palatable.
All right, we got a lot to get into tonight. We have Pitt transfers to talk about. We got the Pirates, who open up today. And also coming up next, it's the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are losing ground despite winning games. How is that possible? Loser points, baby. We'll talk about it next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. The #1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by #1 Cochran. Go one better. And by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.